Let's welcome in our two guys here, Bill Ryder and Avery Johnson. We're going to play matchmaker here. And Avery, you're going to give us the top destination for some of these players. And then Bill, you have the tough work here of trying to tell us exactly how those trades are going to go down because they're not so easy. So Avery, we'll start with you. Your top destination for Kevin Durant.
Well, I think the top destination for Kevin Durant is definitely the Phoenix Suns. I think based on the conversations that he's having behind the scene with his business manager, Rich Kleiman, I know a lot of people in this inner circle, his first choice is the Phoenix Suns. Now, if he lands in Miami or if he lands even in Boston, sure, he'll go and both of those situations, all three of them will be much better than what he has with the Brooklyn Nets. But his goal is to play with Devin Booker. Now, how they pull that off, I'm not quite sure. Maybe they get DeAndre Ayton's contract involved with it, but his top destination is to play with the Phoenix Suns. He's been working out with Devin Booker this summer in Los Angeles. They played together last year on our national team. So in a perfect world, he'd like to play with Devin Booker, Chris Paul, play for Coach Monty Williams, and land in the Valley of the Sun.
Okay, Bill. So we have Avery here saying, look, Kevin Durant's goal is to play with Devin Booker. They've been working out together. They've been playing together. And he's like, I don't really know how it's going to happen. That is where you come in, Bill Ryder. How do the Suns make this happen in order to land KD?
Well, Coach is right. I think DeAndre Ayton's got to be part of the equation, but that complicates things. Any player that is part of a signing trade automatically hard caps the team that receives him, which is very difficult for Brooklyn given their cap situation. So, guys, I think a third team would have to be involved who have cap room, and this is also a big one, a big if, and you have to want DeAndre Ayton and value him. So let's throw in the Pacers here. You can see it there. Miles Turner and multiple first-round picks go to Brooklyn. That's a really nice way to jumpstart a rebuild and not have it take too long. Durant, as Coach mentioned, goes to the Suns. And then Ayton, along with Bridges, and I think it'd take probably a good number of first-round picks, head to the Pacers to try and make that work. DeAndre Ayton's got to be part of the equation, guys, but he probably can't go to Brooklyn just given the particulars of the CBA and how difficult in terms of making the numbers work it would be if DeAndre Ayton in the sign and trade went to Brooklyn.
Bill, you've talked a lot about how you're not sure if Sean Marks will cooperate with KD and getting him to the team where he wants to go. That particular trade, is that attractive enough for him?
So it's not attractive enough if I'm Sean Marks. Now, I'm aware that Sean Marks is making it known in various reports, and there are stories that are being leaked that the Nets want to hold firm and get what I think they should demand, which is an all-world return, and they're not going to let Kevin Durant hold them hostage. Maybe that's true. I think that would be an ideal situation. And maybe they're just trying to drive the price up on Phoenix. For me, look at what Rudy Gobert just commanded. You're talking 4 first-round picks, in effect. It's not enough for me, but I think it's a pretty good return if it is Phoenix. And as we've seen in the past, this ability of players to not just decide they want to leave, but dictate where they go. If that holds firm, I think it's a pretty good return given those circumstances.
And we will talk about the Jazz here in just a second. But a lot of assumption is if Kevin Durant does leave, which ultimately looks like he will, that Kyrie will not be for long there with the Nets. What is your top destination, Avery, for Kyrie Irving?
Well, my top destination, only destination right now, is the Los Angeles Lakers. This is a situation where, you got a guy in Kyrie Irving that says, hey, Kevin Durant and I and James Harden at the time, we really don't need a coach. But he needs LeBron James. And his career hasn't been the same since he left LeBron James. Look at what happened in Boston. Didn't make it to a finals. Yes, won Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, things have not gone. Things have gone awry with the Brooklyn Nets. Hasn't been able to get on the court, especially because he refused to get the vaccination early in the season. That put Brooklyn in a bind. So I think the only landing spot right now, especially if Brooklyn is willing to take back Russell Westbrook, is the Brooklyn Nets. So the Los Angeles Lakers reuniting Kyrie Irving with LeBron James. And it's only going to work if the Lakers are able to retain Anthony Davis, because if they can't retain Anthony Davis to go along with Kyrie Irving and LeBron James, then this really doesn't jumpstart the Lakers in any way.
All right, Bill, we've talked about it, how there's not necessarily a huge market out there right now for Russell Westbrook. And Avery said this is his only destination for Kyrie. When it came to getting KD to the Suns, you brought in a third team here. Did the Lakers have enough in order to make this work for Kyrie to get there?
I think they do, and I think Coach is right. This is the best spot. It's the only spot. There's not much of a market for Kyrie Irving. And all along, and Coach is also right, Russell Westbrook has to move. That means that the Lakers have to believe that attaching the picks, that it requires to get rid of that contract, bring back the right return. So what you see there is probably the best case scenario for the Nets. That's a lot to ask. I mean, I think it's a lot to ask in terms of getting Seth Curry back, getting Joe Harris back. But it's those multiple first-round picks, 2027, 2029 almost certainly, that are required for this to happen. And as I understand it, talking to sources, there is some disagreement, and maybe not even disagreement. There are continuing conversations in that Lakers organization about how much they should give, that's the first-round picks, and how much they should demand in return. That is Seth Curry and Joe Harris. I think a deal will get done, and I think the deal you're looking at is the deal if the Lakers drive a really hard bargain, but as part of that, required they basically, in effect, give away a huge chunk of their future, because those picks, while not valuable now, will be down the road. And when this experiment, whether it works or doesn't work with Kyrie, AD, and LeBron, if we get there, when it's over, it's going to be a very difficult rebuild if this trade goes through.
We will move on from all the drama that is the Nets right now. Very anxious to see, though, how it all plays out. Let's talk about the Jazz here and Donovan Mitchell. Look, they sent away Rudy Gobert. They got a whole bunch in return for him from the Timberwolves. We assume this is total rebuild now for the Jazz. Donovan Mitchell will be somewhere else. Avery, what is the best place for him?
Well, if it's not the New York Knicks, Amanda, I believe that is going to be the Miami Heat. Miami Heat, I believe, have the assets. And I think it's going to be zeroed around Tyler Hero. You know, Tyler Hero, he wants an extension. He wants to be a starter. And I think with his talent level and maybe throwing in Duncan Robinson's contract, maybe Miami can get there. But you look at a guy like Donovan Mitchell, if you compare him with Jimmy Butler, we'll see if Kyle Lowry's healthy, or maybe they may need Kyle Lowry's money to make this work. But specifically, when you look at Donovan Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, those three guys could be a formidable big three to really try to dethrone the Boston Celtics in terms of their aspirations of getting back to the NBA Finals with their talent set right now, especially with adding Malcolm Brogdon to the mix. I think Miami could be a very nice destination for Donovan Mitchell, especially if he doesn't find his way in Madison Square Garden.
Okay, Bill, make this work. Look, the Jazz, they got a ton for Rudy Gobert. You talked about that earlier. What would the Heat have to give up in order to get Donovan Mitchell here? And how much is Kyle Lowry going to be an issue in all of this?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm with Coach. This is, I think, a perfect fit for Miami. We saw in the postseason they need more offense. They need a guy who can go get buckets. That's Donovan Mitchell, and that's a championship team if you add him. But I think you have to bring in a third team. I think you bring in the Spurs here, who are also in tear down, rebuild mode, and it is basically the Heat trying to send everything out to make the numbers work. Now, some of the obstacles could be the Duncan Robinson contract. The Jazz and Danny Ainge in particular have to value that. Tyler Hero's a really nice piece. That guy has a bright future in the league, and people think he's a really important player. And then it's just multiple picks that have to go. I think Doug McDermott probably is part of that trade and moves as well. But as you can see, it is the Heat sending out a huge chunk of their roster, unloading two bad contracts in Lowry and Robinson, and giving away multiple first-round picks, probably to the Spurs as well, and to the Jazz. So again, it's a similar situation to the Lakers, though I think probably more likely to be effective for longer. The Heat will have a very competitive window that will last several years. And it's not like Donovan Mitchell is any kind of an old-time player, but this is your core and this is your group, because what the Heat have to give away in terms of pick and all these other young players really makes any rebuild, if this doesn't work out, difficult to accomplish.
Bill, I'm going to give you a lot of credit for making that work. Also, Jack and Ruben, who are working on this behind the scenes. All of you are great GMs right now for making that trade go down. And I hope these three teams are looking at exactly what you put together there. All right, somebody not getting talked about as much, but it would be a big move. John Collins, Avery, what's the top destination for him?
Well, John Collins, I think he'll have a little bit more of a market than a Kyrie Irving for different reasons. But, when you look at a team like the Washington Wizards, I think that could be a destination for John Collins. Of course, we've heard Portland in the mix. Because at the end of the day, I think the Wizards should have traded Bradley Beal a long time ago. I'm happy that he got a max, especially as a former player. But for them to continue to try to take that next step, I don't believe they're even a play-in team right now. They made the move for Kristaps Porzingis. So whether he's included in this trade or they try to pair Porzingis with Collins on that front line to go with Bradley Beal, it maybe would inch them more towards a play-in team. But Collins has a little bit more of a market than you believe. And I'm just thinking that the Wizards could be a solid landing spot for him to be kind of that 1-2 pick and roll combination with Bradley Beal, with Collins setting that screen, Beal coming off of it. Collins is a much improved outside shooter. So the Washington Wizards could be a spot for John Collins.
John Collins still with 4 years left on his 5-year, $125 million contract with Atlanta. Bill, what would the Wizards need to give up in order to get him?
Yeah, by the way, I'm with Coach. I think John Collins is a good player, and that contract feels very reasonable as new contracts and new salaries take hold, this year and the years that are going to happen ahead. So it's going to have to be a first-round pick. Obviously, is going to have to be attached. I think Avdija is going to have to be a part of that pick. Kuzma. I mean, it's going to be a lot of players. But Washington, I think, isn't afraid to make these kind of moves, guys, and make these kinds of trades. Because as Coach just talked about, Bradley Beal probably should have gone somewhere else. He didn't. He was loyal, and he took the money. I think it's both. And so now Washington's got to absolutely retool. And I think Coach is right, too. This is one of the possible spots. But there's going to be a market in a real way for John Collins if, as is expected, Travis Schlenk, who runs basketball operations for the Hawks, just decides that it doesn't work with John Collins and that team, which really reads as Trae Young. They just, for whatever reason, they don't get along. They don't play particularly well on the floor together. And there's a sense around the NBA that Collins' ceiling in the right spot is much higher. So that may drive the price even higher than what we just talked about. And I want to say this, shout out to all the guys, that crack, absolute top class producing crew there in Florida who help with all of these moves, because these are great decisions by you, Avery, but they are not, I promise, they're not easy to accomplish.
I was going to say thanks to Coach Avery Johnson, HQ GM Bill Ryder, and our little GMs behind the scene. They're going to be mad at me that I said little GMs. Our massive, dominant GMs behind the scenes, Jack and Ruben. Great segment, guys. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you very soon. Maybe one of these deals is going to happen soon. Best remaining free agents out there. James Harden.